Speaker, thank you very much. I'm pleased to have a few minutes this afternoon on the Good Government Act 2010. Before I do begin those remarks, though, I want to just make a comment, if I can, on some of the remarks that were made by other members this afternoon, and I've had opportunity to be around here this afternoon for most of the remarks that were made on this particular piece of legislation. The member from Durham, when he spoke, and hopefully we'll see him back here again before the end of the day, he has a wonderful capacity for making you smile no matter what it is that he says, even if what he is saying, how shall I phrase this, deviates perhaps from what might be factual. In terms of whatever it is we may be debating. He was, in his remarks earlier, when he was speaking on the Good Government Bill, he was talking about how it would have been easier for him or other members of his particular caucus to make comments on this particular piece of legislation had they been able to have been briefed or had they had time to have been better prepared. It's my understanding that every effort possible was made to accommodate members of all parties, both opposition parties, when it came to briefings on this matter. And in fact, I would remind the member from Durham, who apparently had challenges in that regard, that the members of the third party apparently had no such challenges, that they were able to meet and be fully briefed on the matter before us here today. So I just wanted to say to my friend, the member from Durham, who does tend to make me smile no matter what it is he is saying, apparently him and his party were the ones experiencing those challenges, and that the third party did not have a similar experience. Speaker, the member from Halton earlier today as well spoke at length. He did, I think, about 45 minutes or so of an hour leadoff, and I congratulate him for that. That's not always the easiest thing in the world to do. Before he shared his last bit of time with the member from Durham, he spent a fair bit of his time when he was speaking on the Good Government Act, speaking on the state of the economy in Ontario, the state of the economy in a more broad context. And I think, if I can, I want to focus some of my remarks today in the same vein. At least at the beginning, if I can. When I came to this place in 2003, in that particular provincial election, I came here with 2 terms of experience on municipal council in Thunder Bay. I had 6 years of experience, and I think in 2003 there were 38 or more first-time members who came into the legislature. And I recall that a significant number of that 38, if I've got that number right, came with municipal experience. Previous, very directly before the provincial election, municipal experience. And the reason that many of that number were here as former municipal councillors was, and the reason that so many of them had put their names forward for election in 2003, was that while they were on municipal councils in the province of Ontario, they were listening and watching very closely what had gone on with the government of the day, the Mike Harris, Ernie Eves government. And as municipal councils, and as a municipal councillor for 6 years in Thunder Bay, I had very direct first-hand experience as to what effect the provincial government could have on the ability of myself and my group as a municipal council to manage the affairs of our particular communities. And so going into 2003, many of us put our names forward. We wanted to have an ability to impact what it was the provincial government was doing and how those actions, potentially negatively or positively, could impact the goings-on within your particular community. So the member from Halton spoke at length about that and the state of the economy. I want to put a bit of context around that. My experience started in 97 to 2003. We remember, Speaker, in 1995, going forward for 8 years under that particular rule of the Conservative government of the day, we witnessed in the United States at that time a very, very strong, robust economy. And given the fact that Ontario represents about 40% of the total GDP of Canada, and given the fact that Ontario, of its GDP, has about 40% of it is export-driven, the fact that we had a very strong and robust economy in the United States, our major and by far our biggest trading partner, the fact that we had a strong American economy obviously put the government of the day in a very good position for the Ontario economy to be doing just as well as we piggy-tailed on what was going on, ponytailed on what was going on with the states, the United States. We also had at that time, which further supported the capacity of the government of the day to have a strong economy, a 63 or a 70-cent dollar. I don't remember exactly where it was during the 8 years. It bounced around a little bit. But we certainly know it was significantly lower than it is today, or when we came to government through our 7 years and counting of government. We certainly know that we're, I think, around par today. It's bounced around a little bit over the last year or so. But we know that when, during those times, that it was significantly lower, as low as 64 cents. My friend from Peterborough tells me, obviously, currency, trading at 35 or 40% the value of your biggest trading partner, 35 or 40% lower, provides you, especially once again, with a significant aid to your economy, especially when you're export driven. We also know that back then the price of a barrel of oil was somewhere in the order of magnitude of $20 or $25 a barrel. And we know today that it's, I was asking around before I got up to speak today, somebody told me that that was somewhere today in the order of $78 a barrel, and we know it's been higher than that since we've been in government since 2003. So, Speaker, here's my point. So in spite of all of those things, playing very well in the favor of the government of the day from 95 to 2003, and remember, excuse me, Speaker, and remember, this is a party who loves to tell you that they can take care of your pocketbook, that they are the ones that can best manage the fiscal matters in the province of Ontario. In spite of having all of those factors playing in their favor from 95 to 2003, the result was what? Well, when we came to government, not a government number, but a number given to us and the people in the province of Ontario by the Auditor General, was that in spite of all of that I've just said over the last 7 or 8 minutes, we as a new government in 2003 were left with a $5.3 billion deficit. During some of the best economic times that you were ever able to find in the province of Ontario. With all of those things working for them as well as possibly it could have. I mean, how much more can you have working in your favor than a 63-cent Canadian dollar, a robust American economy, a $20 price per barrel of oil, and still under those circumstances, we found ourselves with a $5.3 billion deficit when we came to government. Now, that's not my number, that's not a government number, it's a number from the Auditor General. And yet over there, they want to talk about the state of the economy. He talked about the debt in the province of Ontario today. Yep, we got a debt. The Conservative government federally in Canada has the biggest debt in the history of the country, right? The biggest debt. Now, why is that relevant? Well, it's relevant because if we ever had a government that was ideologically predisposed against running deficits or helping industry or raising taxes, it would be this particular federal government. And yet, during the economic times that we find ourselves in, they have run up, I think it's something in the neighborhood of $50 or $60 billion deficit. Well, the point is simply that, yeah, we've got a big deficit here in the province of Ontario. But given the state of the economy here in the province and in the country and in the world, described by many as being the greatest recession since the Great Depression, we made some decisions, and some of those decisions were to invest heavily in infrastructure. We did that. I can rhyme off example after example in my riding of Thunder Bay-Atikokan, where those decisions to continue to make major infrastructure investments have led to incredibly significant job creation. Now, the members opposite may have had a different approach. They may have chosen not to make any of those investments. They may have chosen to apparently try and keep the deficit number a little bit lower, but they need to then list for you, the people that are listening to this, what it is they would not have funded. Speaker, that $5.3 billion deficit that we inherited in 2003 had other things that were really quite hard to imagine could have been occurring, and yet we could come to government and still find that. Let me talk to you about a few of those things. As I said about when we're a municipal council, how many people here came to this place in 2003 with municipal council experience primarily because they went through the downloading exercise brought forward by the government of the day, the Harris-Eves government? They want to talk to you about not raising taxes. They want to talk to you about taking care of your pocketbook. but they conducted the biggest tax shift in the history of the province of Ontario, and they did it by downloading services onto the residential property tax base at the municipal level. They hit it. They hit it. They want to tell you they didn't raise taxes. They shifted the taxes down to the property residential taxpayer, just like they did when it came to energy pricing, and I'll get to that in a little while. But they hit it. They played games with it. I was there on municipal council. Now they want to tell you, and they tried to tell you for a long time, that that downloading tax shift that occurred in the province was revenue neutral. Well, we all know that was a bunch of nonsense. I know all kinds of roadway, little communities in my riding of Thunder Bay-Atikokan, like Oliver Papoonge, who've got minimal tax bases and roadworks that are very, very large because their geography is large, their tax base is small, who are still trying to find the capacity to pay for the roads that were downloaded onto their smaller municipalities. They'll tell you it was revenue neutral. Those communities are going to struggle forever with defining the capacity from their property tax base to pay for that infrastructure. We'll see. We've been helping with that in a significant way, but they'll try and tell you that it was revenue neutral. Well, then let's ask them why, Speaker, if it was revenue neutral, why, if it was revenue neutral, did they set up a fund called the Special Transition Fund? I can remember as a municipal councillor the work that we did to get our share of money out of that, and in the first year after we fought to get that fund, the City of Thunder Bay received $7 million out of the Special Transition Fund. So much for revenue neutrality. They found it necessary to backpedal a little. The next year we got $3 million, and then that was it. The fund was gone. And so that much money on an annual basis for about 10 or 12 years has been left to the residential property taxpayers in Thunder Bay and every other municipality around this province to try and find off of their property tax base. That's what they did when it came to taxes. And I tie that back to the $5.3 billion deficit that they left us after they had shifted away that much cost that used to be in the provincial purview. That's what they did. But it wasn't the only thing that they did, Speaker. It wasn't the only thing that they did. To try and hide that deficit, and the member over there started this one when he went down the road of businesses and debts and taxation. One of the other things that they did when they went down that road while they were still in government was sell provincial government assets. They knew that there was an election coming up, and so they tried to hide the debt and make it seem a lot less than it really was. Remember, this is in the context of one of the best economies in the United States in years, where the economy of Ontario is benefiting from that, and still all of this is going on. So the highway was, I'm not from the Toronto area, what was the number of the highway that was sold?
407.
Highway 407. Now I've heard the estimated value of Highway 7 put as high as 11 billion? I've heard the estimated value put as high as $11 billion. Potentially that's what that highway cost, or would have cost to replace. And yet the government of the day in I'm not sure what year that was sold, 99 they sold it, $3 billion. They sold it for $3 billion on an asset that was deemed to be worth, or the replacement value of which might have been as high as $11 billion. Pretty staggering to think why anybody would do it. Well, the reason that they did it, Speaker, was because they were stuck. And even though we've got a red-hot economy in the United States, even though the economy in Ontario is percolating right along, following on the heels of that red-hot economy in the U.S., they still found the need to sell for $3 billion, an $11 billion asset. They still found the need to download provincial services so that they could deal with issues that trying to pay for their tax cuts, and that it still went on. It still went on. What else did they do? They emaciated ministry after ministry. M&R, I'm not sure how many M&R offices they closed. Somebody told me as high as 30 to 50% of them were closed. I'm reluctant to put that number out there, but I know it was, how many was it? 2,000 staff in M&R gone. I forget how many offices were closed, but it was a very significant number. I tell my friend, it was a very significant number. But I don't want to spend too much time, on the M&R offices. What I want to spend a bit more time on is the Ministry of Environment offices. And what happened when they're trying to hide their deficit, when they were trying to pay for their tax cuts, after they sold 407, after they downloaded all of those services from the province onto the residential tax base, what happened when they gutted the MOE offices? Another way to try and save a few bucks to pay for your tax cuts and to hide your debt and your deficit. What else happened when the MOE got cut? Directly linked by Justice O'Connor, directly linked to the Walkerton crisis. Directly linked. Not by the government, but by Justice O'Connor. Another result of trying to hide your debt. You say you're good at managing an economy, this is all tied back to that. It's all tied back to it. It's all part and parcel. Justice O'Connor made a direct link to the decision by that former government to emaciate M&R offices, but more specifically on this topic, MOE offices. People died. 6 or 7 people passed away as a result of that direct link made by Justice O'Connor when it came to the emaciating of MOE offices in the province of Ontario.
Point of order.
110.
Remind the member to frame his remarks in the context of the bill 110.
Well, Speaker, thank you very much, and I appreciate the caution, and I appreciate the point of order by the member opposite. I would have expected that the Speaker might have had a similar caution for the member from Halton, who went on for quite some time when it came to discussing the economy in the province of Ontario. That's what this is all about. The decisions made by the government of the day were to close download services onto the residential property tax base, sell government assets, cut back services like crazy, and try and hide a debt from us.
Madam Speaker, the member knows the rules of this House and is ignoring you and the rules, and that's not right. He's been chastised once and will continue to do so.
It's not a point of order, but I would remind the member to frame his remarks within the context of Bill 110.
The House, a good government bill, and I sat and listened to the honourable member from Parkdale High Park rant on about a War Measures Act. How is that?
The member for Thunder Bay-Atikokan.
Perhaps we've touched a nerve. As I said at the beginning of my remarks, I sat here most of the afternoon and I listened very patiently to the remarks of the members of the official opposition and of the third party. The member from Halton spent a great deal of his 45 minutes or so talking about the business environment that exists in the province of Ontario today, and I'm simply doing the same thing. I'm comparing our record to theirs. I'm comparing our record to theirs. Now, that member may not want to hear it. Speaker, that's ultimately what it's about, isn't it? We're Liberals on this side of the House. We got Conservatives over there, and we got the NDP over here. Within the last 20 years in the province of Ontario, all three parties have had the privilege of governing in the province of Ontario. And as we go forward next year, that's what we're going to be able to do. We're going to be able to compare records. I'm very much looking forward to that. The member from Halton spent a fair bit of his time today doing that. That's what I'm doing now. I'm not doing anything different than he did for 45 minutes of his 1 hour. It's exactly what we're doing. Speaker, we're very, very pleased to have had the opportunity to talk today, and I do appreciate the comments from my friend opposite. It seems like they don't want to be reminded about what happened when they were here. We need to put in context what's gone on while we've been in government, and I think one of the best ways we can do that is by comparing records. Yep, we got a record from 2003 going forward to 2011. They had a record from 1995 to 2003, and they had a record from 1990 to 1995. And that's going to be the focus, and that's the way it should be. That's what people want. They don't want to hear these folks over here. I mean, that's fine. I respect the role of the opposition. They're going to get up and they're going to criticize us, and that's fair. I don't expect them to come over here and give us a pat on the back. But by the same token, Speaker, they need to understand that from time to time the members of the government are going to do the same thing. We're going to get up and we're going to remind the people of the province of Ontario as we go forward to October 2011 that they had a record. And we're going to remind them of that record just as they see it's their role to remind the people about our record. I'm comfortable with that. I'm comfortable with that. Let's bring it on. Let's let it happen, because that's where we're going. You got a record of 8 years. They had a record of 5. We're going to have a record of 8. And so let's play. That's what it's going to be all about. That's where we're going. Speaker, the Good Government Act of 2010 is exactly... I'll go back to the point I made earlier as I have to close. I see my time is running down. The member from Durham who ultimately did not make it back to the chamber, and it's unfortunate that he didn't make it back here today, but it would have been good to see him. He made reference to the fact that the members of the official opposition did not have opportunity to get briefed on this particular topic. I just want to remind the people of the province of Ontario Ontario that are interested in this topic, that in fact the members of the third party had no challenge with that particular issue. They were able to avail themselves of briefings at length so that they could be prepared for their remarks today. Unfortunately, for some reason, the members of the official opposition found it that they were unable to do that, Speaker. I want to thank you for the time this afternoon. Thank you very much.